I've got this lock-on system in my game, and I've gotten the question, how can I make a lock-on system that can cycle through like this, going between different characters? I've done a video on my lock-on system, a simplified version of it, a while ago, and today, instead of making a ground-up tutorial on how to recreate this, because it is kind of specific in some ways, and instead of doing it from the ground up, I want to just take you through the code that I specifically have working in my project. But pretty much the same ideas should apply no matter what. You might just need to tweak a thing or two to make it work with however you have your game set up. I've got it written in C++, but don't worry, I also have a blank blueprint project, and I'm going to just kind of make a mock-up of what this C++ code does in Blueprint for you to be able to more easily follow along. So first and foremost, cycle to new lock-on. This is something that I have mapped to a input action. So whenever I press a input action, in this case the left or right on the D-pad, it calls this function with either a bool for checking left being true, which means that it's going to be checking toward the left, and if this is false, it's going to be checking toward the right. Of course, you can do everything we do here in the up and down direction as well. That would then just be a either different function, or you would need to write this function a little differently to take in a vector 2D to do some math in order to take into account a direction and make this function work in any direction. The first thing we do is we make an array for the nearby enemies. I have a function that just does a sphere trace for nearby enemies. Essentially what that does is just do a sphere overlap actors, and that takes in the player's position, so that would just be get actor location, and that's what we do here. So in this case, that array becomes a local variable, and that's what this pretty much does. There's a little bit more to it, but that's really what it comes down to. Then I check whether or not I am not locked on, if the closest enemy is not valid, or if my nearby enemies array has a length of 0. If any of these are true, I just early return because I don't need to do anything else in this function. Technically speaking, I could do this lock-on check before doing the sphere trace, to also prevent doing the sphere trace to begin with if I'm not locked on, because if I'm not locked on, I don't need to be doing any of this. So that's actually something that I'm probably going to change at some point. So all that this really does is it's pretty much a OR Boolean node with a bool variable just plugged into it, and then a actor reference variable that does an is valid on it. In C++, if you just put in a actor reference or an object reference in general in a place where it expects a bool, it automatically does the conversion to just checking whether or not that object is a valid object or not. And then the nearby enemies number equals 0. It's just a array get length equal 0. Pretty self-explanatory, hopefully. So if any of these three end up being true, it means that I don't need to do the rest of the function, so I just return here. Then we get a player controller, which seems quite complicated written out compared to just get player controller, but it's just doing this. Nothing too fancy about it. And we make a vector 2D for the closest actor screen position. So this is a local variable, which is why you probably want to make this into a function. So I'm just going to call this example. And the reason we do this is because that way you can make a local variable. So let's call this closest position. That only exists within this function, and when you rerun the function, it's got a clean new whatever default value. So that would be vector 2D. Then we use that player controller we just got to set the value of that closest actor screen position. So we get player controller, and the player controller itself has the built-in function to project a world location to a screen location. So it takes in a world location, in this case from our closest enemy actor, just get the actor location from it, and it outputs a screen location. So in Blueprint, you just have this little like pin that it outputs. In C++, you need to give in a variable that is going to assign that value to. But still, again, this is the exact same function between what you see here and what you see here. So you just put in your current targeted enemy as the world location here, and that gets you its screen position. Then we also make a local variable for a float, and that'll be the closest distance. Now, we set this to a float max, which is a macro in C++ that is just a ginormous number. It's just huge. It's the maximum value that a float can have. It's ridiculously large, as a matter of fact. I don't think we really have something like that in Blueprint. Let me just double check that real quick. Yeah, you see this max float is something different. I don't think we have any way to set it to like the maximum float value within Blueprint, which is a little annoying. But you can just give it a default value that is super huge. So if we just give it a default value of like a bunch of 9s, that'll pretty much do it as well. There just needs to be a number that is significantly larger than the size of the resolution that this game is ever going to be played at. So assuming that your game is going to like stay around for a while and is eventually going to have 8K support, if this number is bigger than the 8,000 or so pixels that you have in the width on an 8K resolution, you're good to go. So this amount of 9s is perfectly fine. It doesn't actually need to be the maximum amount of value that a float can have. Now, then we have this array from our nearby enemies that we made with that sphere trace before. That's what we're going to be for looping over. In my case, I first check if the actor is hidden, because I pre-place all my enemies in the game. They're not dynamically spawned in. And if the actors aren't like active, I have them set to just not ticking and being hidden and having no collision and whatever. So this is just essentially checking, hey, is this actor active or is it waiting activation? Which means that essentially we should treat it as non-existent. Then within this for loop, we make another vector 2D, which is going to be the actor screen position for the actor that we're trying to compare right now. So we would then make probably another local variable here. There's a little bit of a difference in the way that this works technically between Blueprint and C++ here. Because in Blueprint, this local variable exists for the duration of the entire function. In C++ here, this local variable only exists for the duration of a single loop through this for loop. Because local variables declared in C++ only exists within the scope that they're created in. So as soon as we leave the scope of this bracket to this bracket, this variable gets wiped. And when we get through it again, it assigns a new vector2 value, like variable there. Whereas the way that we're going to do it in Blueprint, it's going to reuse the same one over and over and over again, which is fine. It's just technically slightly different, something to maybe be aware of. But we'll call this something like compare position. And we make this as a vector 2D as well. And then we pretty much just kind of do the same thing. So if we just make this variable for demonstrational purposes into an array real quick, we just do a for each loop over this array. And what we do here is we get the screen location for each one of these actors. So we get actor location inside of the loop. And then we use that player controller again with convert world to screen location. So that's what's happening here. We get the player controller again, get the actor location for the actor within the loop, and then we put that into this actor screen position, which would be our compare position here in the Blueprint version. Now, this is written a little funky. This is all wrapped within an if statement, because project world location to screen also returns a bool on whether or not that coordinate is successfully projected from world to screen position. If for any reason it isn't, it will return false and it will skip over the rest of this code, because the rest of this code very much relies on this not just returning like a null value. So what you'd essentially do there is you'd get this convert thing to world location, and you just use this bool that it has here into a branch in the loop body. This does the same thing. It's a little weird seeing like an entire function maybe written out inside of an if statement if you don't really like know what's going on there. Then the way I have this set up is slightly hard-coded, but it's a little easier to just make it make sense and read through it this way. I just have two different blocks of code here on what to do when I'm checking towards the left and when I'm checking towards the right. Now, you very much can complicate like the math in this to always just run the same code and just take in a direction instead. I find this a lot easier to read. So If we check to the left, what we do is we check the actor screen position, which is our comparing position, .x, and if that is less than our currently closest actor screen position, .x. So let's say we have a screen here, and this is currently our closest actor position. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be checking whether or not our X position is to this side, so to the left, closer to the 0, 0 top left corner. Because anything that is either on the same X value or to the right, we don't want to be able to like cycle through to those. We're cycling through to the left. So we only want to check, hey, is this a lower value than the value that we're currently working with? And if that X value is a lower value than the value we're currently working with, we then get the distance between our current actor position on screen and our closest screen actor position, which is just using a vector. You can just get its distance to another vector. That's like fairly straightforward, fairly easily, hopefully. Gives you a float. And we just compare that to our closest distance that we have found. By default, this is going to be a huge number. The first time you run this code through a loop, it's going to set it to an actually usable value. And it's going to get you the distance between these two things purely in screen space, in how many pixels they are apart from each other. So then we check if that distance is closer than our nearest left distance, which again, the first time through is always going to be the case, but maybe the second time through, we're actually checking something. If we have our screen here, first time through, maybe we check this, right? But then the second loop through, maybe we're checking against an actor that's all the way over here. And this distance is obviously larger than the distance that we previously checked. So this one is not going to be closer to our current target than this one. However, if we check an actor that's existing right over here, this distance is going to be closer. And in this way, it doesn't even matter which order you check these in, right? Because you're always just eliminating anything that is further away than what you've already checked is going to get ignored. And anything that is closer than what you've already checked is going to be the new thing to check against. So even if we have 100 different actors and we just go through them in a random order, which is essentially what happens with getting a sphere trace. There's no guarantee as to what order these actors exist in this array. It's still always going to end up, in the end, landing on the thing that is the closest to our starting position. So then we set our nearest left distance to the distance that we have found, so that the next loop through we're comparing against our newly found closest distance. And then we set our closest enemy, which is a value that just exists in my lock-on system. It's just an actor reference in this case. To the actor that was given in this part of the loop. And then if we're checking to the right, what we're doing is we're doing the exact same thing, but instead of checking the X being less than, we're just checking if the X is greater than. And of course, then the distance comparison can remain 100% exactly the same. Because the distance doesn't care about whether or not you go to the left or to the right. That's just a pure amount of pixels between two objects. There's no directionality in that. And with that, we get something where we can do this, left, left. And when I'm all the way to the left, it stops going to the left, and then I go to the right, and it just follows the screen space location. So it just finds the next thing that is the closest to either the left or the right from what I'm currently locked onto. Now, again, you can make this a bit more complex in many different ways. You can also include the ability to cycle to the up and the down direction. You can actually use that up and down direction to also add weighting on if things are very far above or very far below your current target's screen position. Make them weighted a little bit lower so that you would more directly end up with a situation where, again, we have the screen, there's our current actor. If we have an actor right over here on our screen and one that's right over here, it might make more logical sense from a game feel perspective to cycle on left to this one instead of this one. Because this one feels like it's not to the left of it, it's to the up direction of it. So cycling left to this might feel kind of bad, especially if the distance becomes very big. Like if we have one all the way down here, that's even closer, cycling to the left and then going to this one might not feel great. So essentially what you could do there is just also find the distance in the like up-down direction, and ideally sample that on a curve. But in a more straightforward way, what you could just do is use the value in the up-down direction, the distance of it, to just divide the score that you get from the distance in the left to right direction. So that way things that are fairly on the same height will get priority over things that are technically closer to the left but very far away in the up and down direction. That's not what I have currently implemented. That is something that I'm looking to do whenever I have time to like kind of revise what we have going on here. So hopefully this video has been kind of useful to you, seeing how I have my code set up, as well as maybe hopefully giving you an insight as to seeing a little bit of C++ code and having some blueprint examples to go along with it. I do intend to make more videos specifically translating blueprints to C++, or sometimes maybe the other way around. A lot of those are going to be bonus videos that go along with main blueprint-based tutorials for patrons and YouTube members. So if you're really interested in trying to learn translating blueprints that you've already made and that you understand with my tutorials into C++ to get more comfortable with it, it also does support the channel a lot if you can just throw it a couple of bucks a month and you get some really good content on top of everything else. And a very big thank you to all my Patreons. You can see them on screen right now. If you want to help support the channel or get any of the project files in any of my tutorials, there's a link down below to the Patreon page to support me, or alternatively as a YouTube member. My Cave student tier supporters, Oiku, Earl, Monseville Erno, and my Cave digger tier supporters, Mauricio Farias.